Photography has always been one of my favorite hobbies. One day, while visiting Virginia for a job, my friend Alex and I decided to explore some abandoned places for a spooky photo shoot since Halloween was just around the corner. After some driving around and quick phone research, we found an old 1950s-era abandoned insane asylum. The place looked perfect for our purpose, but all the entrances were locked, boarded up, and guarded by cameras. We couldn't find a way in. Finally, after a lot of searching, we discovered an old, busted window that led to what once was the kitchen. We found a chair to help us climb in. The moment I set foot inside, a chill ran down my spine. The place was dark, wet, and cold, and I felt as if something was watching me. Alex, who always seemed braver, wanted to explore more, while I started snapping pictures of the broken and overturned objects. Alex walked down a hallway with the words, "All who enter die," scrawled on the wall in faded, ominous letters. I wasn't ready to follow him down that eerie path, so I stayed back, taking pictures. Less than a minute later, Alex came rushing back into the room, looking frightened but trying to keep calm. "All right, I've seen enough. Let's go." "Now," he said urgently. "What happened? Did you see something?" I asked. He didn't answer, just walked past me and started climbing back out the window. My curiosity got the better of me. I leaned over and peeked down the hallway. At the end of the hallway was an empty chair with something small on it that looked like a ball. Suddenly, the object slid off the chair and landed on the floor. I was totally freaked out. I screamed, "Oh hell no!" and ran for the window. Alex was already outside, so I threw him my camera and leaped out, cutting my hands in the process but not caring. We sprinted back to the car, jumped in, and sped away. It took a few miles and several minutes for us to calm down enough to talk. "Did you see that ball in the chair?" When I looked down the hallway, I saw something in that chair, and then it fell to the floor, I exclaimed. Alex looked at me with shock and disbelief. "It wasn't a ball," he said, his voice trembling. I was walking down the hallway, peeking into the empty rooms. It was creepy seeing the flipped-over beds and scattered stuff, but when I got closer to the end of the hallway, I saw what looked like an empty chair with a small doll sitting on it. I thought it was spooky, but figured some crackhead probably put it there. Then, as soon as I thought that, the doll went from sitting up to lying over. I still don't like to think about when it happened. I'm not sure of the exact time, but it was around a year ago. My friends and I always enjoyed finding abandoned places to explore, whether it was a warehouse, a huge mansion, or a racetrack. There were 5 of us that night. Me, Alex, Pearson, Jake, and our driver, Matt. Each of us carried a weapon for safety and a flashlight. We had just finished exploring an old abandoned house when Pearson mentioned he knew of a warehouse that had been deserted for years, about 20 minutes away. So, of course, we all hopped into Matt's car and took off, blasting our favorite songs and laughing. The whole experience was incredibly fun, until the moment everything changed. When we arrived, we piled out of the car and started looking for a way in. As I scouted the perimeter, I realized I'd been there before. Pearson, who was right behind me, recognized it too. We both felt indifferent about it. It was still fun to explore, so I found a gate to jump over. I should mention that I prefer either leading the group or wandering on my own during these adventures. I informed the others that I'd been here before and that it was a pretty cool area, though a bit small. We walked in, and immediately, the scene was one of pure decay. Paint peeling off the walls, smashed glass everywhere, the floor covered in a layer of trash, and a rancid smell permeating the air. You get used to it, though, so we had no complaints. We wandered around, our flashlights casting eerie shadows. But then I remembered something. There was a basement. All of a sudden, Pearson, looking startled, said, "The basement door was open last time we were here." I'm not one to get scared easily, so I shrugged it off. Big deal, who cares? Others had probably visited recently. Still, the thought of the basement lingered in my mind. The place was in ruins, with holes in the walls through which you could see other rooms. In the smallest corner at the far back of the warehouse was a slim stairway leading down to a basement, with a door on the left. I recalled one key detail from my previous visit: the basement door only locked from the inside. I cautiously told my friends about this and looked down the shadowy corridor into the darkness. I wasn't scared, but I felt a growing sense of nervousness. I had to prove myself to my friends. So, I started down the stairs. Each footstep creaked under my weight, the sound echoing off the walls. I finally reached the door. I put my hand on the doorknob and was about to twist it when I heard it. Someone or something was breathing right behind the door. My heart pounded in my chest. There was no possible way someone could have locked themselves in there. I twisted the handle. It was locked. Panic started to set in, and I quickly shuffled back up the stairs. Then the worst part happened. The door downstairs opened. I have never run for my life, but in that moment, I did. I didn't know what had just happened. We were all rushing as fast as we could through the building, our footsteps echoing in the empty space. We could hear noises behind us, objects being knocked over, footsteps, or perhaps something chasing us. I ran ahead, my breath coming in quick gasps. My eyes were fixed on the gate. All I had to do was plant my foot, hop, and climb over. My foot was planted, and I jumped. A hand grabbed my hoodie and pulled me down to the floor. I turned, my heart racing, ready to fight whoever, or whatever, had grabbed me. But it was just Jake, his face pale and eyes wide with fear. He had grabbed my jacket and pulled me down, panicking. Jake was the least athletic among us, so I understood his terror. I let him go first, knowing we needed him to start the car. I hopped the fence as the others scrambled to get into the car. I was the last to enter, just as I heard a noise behind me, the sound of something smashing everything within reach inside the warehouse. We sped away, hearts pounding and breath coming in short gasps. It wasn't until a few minutes and several miles later that we finally calmed down enough to talk. "Did you hear that?" Matt asked, his knuckles white from gripping the steering wheel. "What the hell was that?" "I don't know," I replied, still trying to catch my breath. But there was someone, or something, breathing behind that door. And then it opened. I swear I heard it. Jake, sitting in the passenger seat, turned to look at me. "Are you serious? You think someone was down there?" I nodded, the memory of the breathing sound still fresh in my mind. "I know what I heard. And that door was definitely locked when I tried it. Something, or someone, opened it." We drove in silence for a while, each of us lost in our thoughts. The fun and excitement of the night had turned into a terrifying memory that we would never forget. I don't know what was in that basement, and I don't care to find out. All I know is that it was enough to make me run for my life, and that's something I never want to experience again. To this day, I still get chills thinking about that night. The fear, the sudden change in the atmosphere, and the sound of breathing behind that door, it was all too real. It's an experience that has haunted me ever since, a chilling reminder that some places are better left unexplored.
My ex-husband and I used to love exploring old abandoned houses. It was our little thrill-seeking adventure, something we did together that bonded us. Years ago, there was a beautiful old two-story brick home about a mile from where we lived. It had always intrigued us, standing there, overgrown with tall grass and trees, almost hidden from view. One weekend, we decided to finally check it out. We managed to find an open window and climbed through. Inside, it was like stepping into a time capsule. The furniture was covered with dusty sheets, and everything looked high quality and expensive, as if someone had just walked away from it all in the 1950s or 60s. The wallpaper was rich and ornate, adding to the eerie atmosphere. It felt creepy how it seemed like time had stopped in this house. One odd thing about the place was that the kitchen was upstairs. Curious, we ventured up there. We found a huge archway leading into a gentleman's type of man cave, filled with even more expensive furniture and vintage items. I stood in the archway while my ex rummaged through some old books and trinkets. Off to the side of the arch was a huge mirror leaning against the wall. I used the mirror to check my hair for spiderwebs, taking a few steps back and forth to make sure I was clear. The room was dim, and the only light came from a small, grimy window. I took maybe 3 steps away from the mirror to tell my ex that I wanted to leave. But as I turned back, I felt an overwhelming sensation that someone was standing right beside me. The hair on my neck stood up. I walked back to the mirror, and my heart stopped. In bright pink lipstick, the words, "Get out," were scrawled across the glass. I swear on my life and the lives of my children, those words were not there 2 minutes before. I was right up against that mirror, and I would have absolutely noticed bright pink lipstick on it. The shade was something only an old lady would wear, vivid and unmistakable. I screamed and stumbled backward, crashing into a kitchen table and falling to the floor. My ex rushed over, and I was so scared I could barely speak. I just pointed to the mirror, babbling like an idiot. He looked at it, then back at me, his face pale. He tried to stay calm as he helped me up and guided me out of the house. We never went back. To this day, he thinks I just didn't notice the writing before, but I know what I saw. I was right there, looking directly into that mirror. There was no writing when I first checked it. Every time I think about it, I get cold chills.